Welcome to the Healthy Metal Hippie podcast, where art and wellness collide. I'm your host, Ashley, and I am so excited to connect with you today. Now, let's jump into today's episode, ready to rock and with an open heart. Hi, and welcome back to the Healthy Metal Hippie. Today, we are here with Dawn Baxter. She is the founder of Beyond the Dawn and Multipotentialite Co. Welcome, Dawni. I am so happy to have you here today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, darling.
It makes me really happy because we met, I think just over a year ago through some online courses. And if I'm being completely honest, you have held my hand to transform my life and help me with my businesses and everything else over the past years. And I am forever thankful for you. And so that's why it's extra exciting to have you on the podcast today, because truthfully, I probably wouldn't even be podcasting if it weren't for you.
Oh, that's so lovely. And what a gift we would have lost if you hadn't have been podcasting. I think I'm really bad when it comes to kind of like that whole when did we meet situation. Like, I don't know. You just entered my consciousness and then you were there, and I'm so bad at being able to like pinpoint when that happened. But I think sometimes you come across connections when you're working in this way and you almost just automatically connect, and that friendship builds, and it's like you were never not there. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so difficult. Like, I don't remember a time when there wasn't you in my circle. It just doesn't make any comprehension to me. But yeah, no, I think it probably is about a year. If you say so, then I agree with you.
Yeah, something like that, like a year and a half or so.
Like something like that. We'll go with that. That's cool.
Yeah. So you have all these different businesses, and you do so much to support other business owners, and and you're spreading positivity and really, I think, elevating the consciousness of people out there. Do you want to explain to everybody much better than I can what you do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's actually not the easiest thing to kind of pin down, but I think the best thing that I can do is to give the top level purpose of what I do. And then, we can just all imagine that there's 6 million little things that I do underneath that get me to that thing. My big reason for business, my big reason for reaching out and doing the things that I do is all about raising, like you say, the consciousness and empowerment of traditionally of women. That's evolved somewhat into now being women and good men. And that's a very conscious decision that I make in terms of and good men. And because I know that there's that whole discussion out there about how, not all men are dodgy, and I appreciate that. But at the very beginning of my journey, I was in an abusive relationship. I was not allowed to work with men, and my passion for elevating people and empowering them did come from a personal place of not being empowered, and therefore that natural kind of connection just went towards women. It was just how it was. And I really wanted to put more money, power, and time in female hands. I wanted the women out there who are overlooked, overworked, underappreciated, the ones that don't have the self-esteem but do have the skill, do have the capability, and do have the heart and curiosity and strength somewhere deep down there, to actually get out there and do things that really truly makes them happy. I do believe that the age of patriarchy it's had its day, and it's time now that women get more of a say and we get our voices heard and we shift things for the greater good of everybody. And that's kind of where it came from. And I decided that I was going to help 1 million women. That was my kind of big ethos. I was going to help 1 million women, which I'm so close to doing. I've nearly hit that number now. And I realized that actually, as you go through this kind of business point of view, you actually end up changing that. And now I'm about helping those women to change their corner of the world. Because if you can imagine empowering 1 million women and them being able to change just their little corner of the world, how impactful on scale would that actually be? And you think to yourself, like, oh, I'm just one person, but the ripple effect of that connection and the possibilities that we have because of the digital age in a way that the generations before us just did not have, the power to do. We can reach more people. We can make things better and be a power for good, and a much further kind of reach and scale. So that's kind of like the core of all the businesses. And I know for many people who know me from a marketing and strategy point of view, they kind of look at that and go, well, Dawni, like you're actually just in advertising. Like what's that got to do with empowering women? Because, it just doesn't fit. But when I came into marketing, to help people, first of all, I fell into marketing. That was almost an accident. I absolutely fell into it. But when I came into that sphere of business, it was a man's game, and it was very direct, and it was very shark-like, and it was very kind of clipboard man at the door with his foot in the door so you can't close the door on him type of energy. Even digitally, it was very forceful. I don't even want to say it was masculine energy, because it wasn't the purest form of masculine energy. It was toxic, and it was just such a difficult thing to break into. And there were all of these fantastic female entrepreneurs who were being trained and taught to be like shark-like and direct, and it, they didn't have any customer service. They didn't have any old style care and value in the way that they were treating their potential consumers. And it was just, it was awful. And people weren't making sales, and they were struggling, and they were abandoning their ideas and their businesses on this basis. So this is where I came up with this idea that we were going to have this hyper feminine, super gentle, sweet, calm, and loving, but serious marketing support for female entrepreneurs that meant that they didn't have to go to these big bro marketeer agencies. They could actually have a way to market their ideas and what they wanted to bring into the world without having to do that. And that's how it all kind of started. Now, if you ask me to list all of the things that I do, as you well know, there are too many to list. There's multiple businesses, there's multiple ideas, there's multiple products that we support. We have podcasts, we do content shoots, documentaries, all sorts of different things. And the truth be told, I guess what we are is we like to challenge ideas. We like to create content that will shift perspectives, and in a way that counterbalances the standard digital negative bias, which all social medias and digital platforms unfortunately tend to have a lean towards. We're trying to balance that back out so that when you consume our content or you're involved with us in some sort of way, you have the tools to make your own autonomous decisions on what you want to do in business, without feeling like you have to lean into what is the norm now, what is the default. And everything we do leads back to that kind of narrative.
Yeah. And yeah, you absolutely nail all of that. And you can, I don't know, if you check out, if you're listening here and you check out her Facebook pages, Instagrams, all this stuff, and the podcast, you can see how it ties through in everything that you do. It's really amazing. Do you think that there's a shift happening? Because I've been feeling it actually really, really heavily, looking at all this. We're not going to politics, but all of the election stuff in the States and all this craziness surrounding the Olympics and just everything. It's been so heavy online. But I think honestly, as loud as those voices are, uh, in the nicest way, they're spreading hate and really awful things. I really think that there's a shift, and people are really, really hungry for positive and kindness and sharing love. And you are kind of this like being that's there, making that ripple effect. But are you seeing a shift like that too, where people are just so over it, all the hate?
I think so. I mean, I like to believe that people are inherently good anyway, even those that are spreading ideas that we would consider to be hateful. If you scratch underneath the psychological surface just a tiny bit, 9 times out of 10, they are trying to voice their values, and their values tend to come from some sort of valuable source for them personally. So they may not be widely accurate, and they may not be well educated. That sounds awful, and I mean that in the kindest possible way. They may not have had the gift of being able to see other perceptions, because not everybody grows up in a situation that allows for them. There's privilege in being able to have conversations with intelligent and intellectual people that will change your thought process, your mindset, and your perception. And not everybody is given that same gift, okay? And people come from where they're at. They can only meet you as far as they've met themselves. And quite a lot of people out there have never had the opportunity, don't even know that the idea of that could possibly exist for them. And a wider amount of the global population are living in survival mode. So again, the privilege of having the luxury of being able to have intellectual ideas, or to understand somebody else's perspective, or to educate yourself. Education takes time, it takes experience, it takes allowing yourself to be amongst people who are different from you, and allow yourself to open your mind to their thoughts and opinions in a way that you could be changed. And then obviously you choose what you do with that based on your own core values. But I think there's a lot of misinformation online. I think that there's a lot of people who are accidentally, unintentionally, and in an uneducated way spreading what is hate. That, for many of them, I don't believe that there's malice in that. For many of them, they just want to be heard like everybody else. But they don't understand the impact. They don't understand, or they don't have the emotional bandwidth to care about the impact that can happen on the ripple effect. And the internet didn't come with a guidebook.
Mm.
So we just created this thing where all humans are now able to connect to each other through, like, the most ridiculous, easy means. I could speak to somebody who lives on the other side of the world that's had a completely different experience from me, different gender, 20 years my senior, or younger than me. And there would be no other reason for us to connect in a natural sense without the internet. And we just, all of a sudden our
Just
opinions are
did.
together.
Yeah.
Right. And, when we built the internet and we decided that we were all going to connect in this thing, I feel like we fumbled that. Like, as human beings, sometimes I can't help myself. I pinch, like I'll be like, I pinch, and I'm like, oh, I just can't. Because where was the adult? Where was the adult that looked at that scenario and went, actually, this is going to be an absolute sodding nightmare. We're going to have every single potential spectrum of personality, experience, and human, and we're just going to throw them all in one bag and let them talk to each other, and just like, do you know what I mean? Like, as a social experiment, if a scientist had gotten hold of this, they would have been like, these conditions are not right for us. It's like, it would just be like throwing a bag of rats together and expecting them to get on. And I do think that, we've had such a hard time introducing this digital age into our lifestyle, and because we are also determined by code. Everything that we experience online is code, and the code tries its best to read human experience. It's trying to be its own brain, and it's doing a very good job, actually, in comparison to kind of like what we may have expected 20 or 30 years ago when we actually look at
Right.
where we are. But our actual brains are set up for negative bias. Our brains are set up to recognize hate because our brains are set up to put us in survival. Caveman us needed that to get to 20 years old, if they got to 20 years
If
old. Do
they
you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
we needed that. We needed to know what the threat was. We have not evolved enough for our new circumstances, and the internet, although it looks like an evolution, all it actually did was connect us in our current state. The code creates the negative bias, which means that you do see more hate. You also see confirmation bias. So the things that you fundamentally think are wrong, you're probably going to see more of that. It's going to confirm to you that that's what the world is really like, even though it's not.
Yeah.
And it's all just not particularly accurate. And a bit like in the same way that people used to read the newspaper and think that that was gospel,
Right.
we now a large percentage of people will see the hate and think that's what's really going on. And again, it's a little bit like a political campaign. There are people with money and power behind that want us to see what they want us to see. So we'll have the emotive response that we then have.
Yeah.
So that's what we kind of have lived with, along with a lot of very negative historical events, which we'll not list. We don't need to go there,
No.
but we've all lived through them. So now you get to this kind of point where we're exhausted. We are exhausted with the hate. We're exhausted with the propaganda, because some of it is. We're exhausted with the constant fear. We're exhausted with the negative historical events. We know that our timeline is going to make it into the history books of, it's not going to be a quiet time in the history books for our grandchildren's grandchildren. Like, we know we've made it in history. Thanks very much. And we just don't need any more. And I think from a psychological standpoint, our brains were never, ever going to be able to handle the amount of additional information and consumption that there is on a global scale now that we have the internet. And that's why we need some release. We need some respite. We need something good, because what it looks like for a lot of people is that we're inherently stupid, bad animals doing bad things to each other all the time. Right? Because that's what we're fed online. And then if you look at the news very rarely bothers to tell a good story. It's all the negative stuff. It's all the bad stuff. Like when a war has begun, or a kidnapping has happened, or a terror attack, or whatever. And the reason why they do that, again, is the brain, it's survival. It's giving the people information so that you can do what you need to do, in the hope that you will be able to help yourself survive through whatever. Like, it's information to help you live, right? That's the point of it. And it comes from a good place. But the constant consumption of the negative, it does kind of make you feel like, ugh, what is the freaking point? And I don't know if you know about this, Ash, but they made a computer. It was an art gallery, and they made this robot. And the robot bled out its own kind of oil. And they made the oil in this robot red. And in order for it to stay alive, it had to sweep its oil back into itself. And they did it as a very, very kind of poignant, profound way of showing that we make this robot human. We're just constantly fighting fires. We're trying to survive. Like our whole human experience, to some degree, feels like a constant freaking battle. You can't stop sweeping. You got to keep getting your blood back in your body to just keep going, and you're keeping going just to put the blood back in your body. And it took a ridiculously short amount of time before this intelligent computer decided that there was no point in being alive. I'm only living to put the oil back, to put the oil back, to put the oil back. So actually the clever thing here is to just exterminate myself. And that is the place where humanity as a whole, when we get ourselves in this negative energy, could very easily get to. And it only takes one person, probably mediocre, middle-aged white man, let's be honest, to decide that it's time to press the red button and then it's over for all of us, one way or
Yeah.
another. It's a very,
Yeah.
very dangerous place to be. Now, I don't know why I was born with inherent optimism. I don't know why I was born with inherent light. I do not know. It's a gift that I'm grateful for every single day. And despite all the negative stuff that I see online, I'm able to overcome it. I still have my bad days. Please don't think by any means I'm like da, 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 all the time, because I'm not. I have moments where I'm really low and my energy is down. And I have to take myself away and take care of myself in those moments so that I could come back and live in the overflow of abundance on different times. But I just really think that there is a power in humanity in counterbalancing that negative stuff all the time, because it's not true reflection. If you go out and walk into the street, you will see love everywhere. You will see families. You will see the connection between human beings. You'll see connection between human beings and animals. You'll see the nature that we actually have on this planet. You'll see good things that actually regenerate that little feeling of, oh, it's totally not worth it being here. It totally is worth it being here. And there are ways to elevate your experience, but there are also ways to elevate the experiences of those around you. And I just feel like that's so powerful. Like, what if we just used these tools to make things better rather than accepting so much of the bad all of the time? And, I don't know if you've seen, but there's a bit of a trend at the moment that's like, oh, we're going to be a bit delulu, we're going to be a bit delusional, and we're going to decide that everything's actually fine. And I love it because although it seems like we're all going a bit mental, it's actually such a fantastic tool for flipping the script and taking back control. Rather than being a product of everything that you consume, you get to decide. And I love that because, say, for instance, a percentage of the population did that, and it got popular to actually choose for yourself. And people were walking around delusional but happy and helping other people and supporting other people. We would counterbalance all of the hate.
Oh
It
yeah.
would flip.
It would, and I think, and then it wouldn't even be being Delulu anymore. It would
Right,
be completely authentic, right?
right,
And I agree with you. I think people are inherently good, and I think you're right. How that those voices, everything we see that kind of bad stuff. But when you if you take even 10 minutes to just go a little deeper into whatever it may be that you're consuming, there's probably good things. There's probably people standing up for people. There's probably things being learned and love being shared, even in those pockets of shittiness.
right.
And
Right.
it
And there's
makes
like a
me
saying, I
happy.
don't know if you've ever, it makes me happy as well. Like, I don't know whether you've heard this, but it became quite popular a few years ago, especially for those of us that are parents. Whenever these big, horrible events are happening and kids are asking questions, it was just like a statement, like, look for the helpers. Whenever there's a bad thing, there's
Yes.
always the helpers. And I remember hearing somebody say that for the first time, and I was like, damn, that's the perception shift that we all need. Like, bad things do happen all the time, and they always have throughout history. The only difference is we weren't sending out 1,000 pigeons with little letters
Yes.
on telling everybody about every single
Yes.
bad thing to every other town. Do you know what I mean? We were blissfully unaware
But
in
this is it.
previous times.
I say that to people
Right.
too. I'm like, there's actually less crime and less everything than there was before. I'm like, it's just that we have more access to see it all now. And
Right.
and some people are like, no, no, no. And I'm like, no, no, no. Trust me. It's people are
We've
getting
also got
better
this
at it.
idea. Yeah, I think so. But we also have this idea, and this is like the dream that we were sold, is that like we're entitled to a happy life. And this is probably going to be a shocking statement from me, but we're not entitled to, am I allowed to swear?
Yes, swear, fucking do it.
We're not entitled to shit. Like we get this experience and we get whatever we're given when we're born. And there are those of us that are born into privileges that other people do not have. Okay. And every single one of those privileges it gives you an opportunity to have a happier existence than somebody who has to fight harder to get that same balanced level of happiness, right? But you're not entitled to that happiness. You're entitled to a human experience. You've been born into this situation. Some of us were born into quite happy situations. Some of us were born into exceptionally happy situations. Most of us were born into okay situations, and then the vast majority of humans are born into absolute dog shit situations. And no, if you look at your potential for a happy experience, no two people are actually the same, but there is a sweeping scale here of the privileges that you were gifted at birth, right? That might get you closer to a happier existence with less work. Now, this concept is mad to me. Like you would just arrive here, and I'm a bit of a princess. You know this about me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I will make jokes about how I feel like it's ridiculous that I wasn't born into generational wealth. I was born into generational poverty because I'm such a princess inside. Like I can't help myself. I really do think I should have been aristocracy, but that is still a joke. It is still a joke, right? Like I know that I have to do the things that will make my experience happy. It's my responsibility, radical responsibility. Nobody else's. Not my family's, not my parents, not my partner, not my bank accounts, not my clients, not my kids, not even my animals. Like it's up to me. Did I walk into an experience that allowed me the potential for a very, very fruitful, well experienced, majority happy existence? Yes, I did. I won the genetic lottery. I was born in this time with this level of healthcare. I am a white British woman. I was born a woman. I am a woman. I feel like a woman. There's been nothing to worry about in that aspect. I'm very clear of my identity. Yes, I was born into what you could consider to be a low-level working class poverty. But there's a roof over my head, food on my table. And even though there are generational traumas from my family, in the majority, they're quite exceptional people and they did love me and they did take care of me. So, you look at that and you think to yourself, well, like, you can't not, for somebody like me, you can't not be grateful for that. Like, I
Yeah.
already walked into this with chips in the game,
Yeah.
but nobody is actually promised it. Nobody, if you have a conversation with somebody else that was born into a different scenario, like you'll recognize, no, you're not entitled just by being born. You have to be grateful for the things that you get, and then you have to, whatever starting block you're on, man, you have to figure out what you need to do next to get closer. And depending on what you were born into depends on how much work that's going to take to get there.
Yeah. And I mean, and it is the reality of it. Um, but I think too, we also, we lift each other up as we go through these experiences, hopefully, right? And,
Right.
and I think, we do get inspired by people's stories where they have overcome incredible hardships, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
even Dawni, if you look at yourself, like you mentioned, you were in an abusive relationship. And I'm sorry, you were married, right? And um,
Yes.
and so you know, I was also in an abusive marriage, and I think it takes, obviously this is later in life. This is not just childhood, but I think it takes a tremendous amount of believing in yourself and just, you know, so much work to work through and kind of undo the damage and find that belief in yourself to like build these foundations and totally thrive. Like you are you are truly amazing. And so and but you do that, and it's inspiring to see. And I think if other people are listening and they are in or have been in an abusive relationship, whether whatever it may look like for them, there's also like there's that hope at the end of it. And just because that was your reality then, it doesn't have to stay your reality. Yeah.
So yeah, you're totally right. The experience of understanding that sometimes being in that darker place in your life, it doesn't have to necessarily be the end point, is a very powerful thing. I think especially for domestic abuse, it's very, very difficult sometimes to think that it will get better. And I don't think it's particularly helped by the knowledge, and we all know this to be true, that for many of us, the abuse gets worse when you actually leave. So I know for me, when I was, first of all, it took me a long time to realize that I was being abused. A long time. I didn't know. And that sounds so stupid from
No, it doesn't.
somebody that, I consider myself to be an intelligent woman. I just thought that my partner had some problems, and I just thought that he was quick to anger, and I thought that if I loved him more and if I showed him more security and I changed things about myself, he would settle and he would soothe. And he himself had been not particularly well loved as a child. So I'm trying not to kind of give too much of his information away, because I just don't think that's fair. But um yeah, like his circumstance and the way that he behaves now very much comes from the way that he was treated as a child. So, history repeats itself. It was passed on. And he himself, even to this day, does not believe himself to be an abusive person. He's 100%. He does not see it, and it's incredibly subtle how it creeps up. It's like a lobster in hot water. You don't notice that the heat's been turned up one tiny little notch over years and years and years, and then one day you wake up and you're like, wow, it's boiling in here and I can hardly breathe. Like, when did it get this bad?
Yep.
Yeah, and like even then I spent an easy 2.5 years convincing myself that it, this isn't right. Like, yeah, okay, so he does do that sometimes, but that doesn't make it this. It does, he does this, and that's awful, and I hate it, but it's because of this. And oh my gosh, the excuses. To some degree, I know it's not my fault. Okay, so I will say that. I know it's not my fault. But one of the things that I think in abusive relationship, especially if you're in a narcissistic dynamic, um, you do actively participate in the illusion that it's not an abusive relationship, because
Mm-hmm.
it's too hard for you to face that is actually what it is. So you actively buy in to their manipulation because you want to believe what they're saying. You want to believe that it's not. You don't want to be that very standard textbook version of an abusive relationship. And unfortunately, that keeps you stuck for a lot
Yeah.
longer. Um, and yeah, it took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of me in a way that I didn't recognize until I was very, very far away from who I really am. And it was low level for such a long time. And when I say low level, I mean it was instances that would happen once every few months, rather than like daily. And then it accelerated after
Yeah.
my son was born. It accelerated every single year. It just got more, 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 more. And even when I knew it was abusive, even when I was absolutely certain that it was, and I was desperately unhappy, and I knew somewhere deep, deep down I needed to leave, I still didn't go for easily years. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
emotionally checked out of the relationship so much earlier than physically leaving. And then even after I left, I still went through an entire year of making absolutely certain sure that nothing I could do would heal him. Because if there was any possible thing I could do to control or support a change in that person, I was going to stay. And that was my level of loyalty, even after all the abuse.
Yeah. And that's the sad thing too, because you always, in a lot of ways, it's like, well, what can I do to make it better? And it's like, that is Delulu, straight up.
Yeah, in the wrong way. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
because it's
you keep yourself stuck, right?
it'll never happen. And I mean, you know what? Okay, I'd like to say that sure, there are times where people are like, holy shit, I am a total dickhead. I am really abusive.
Yeah,
But I mean, that's like 0.5% really. And I think
so
you're,
rare. It's
I,
so rare.
I think you're right. They never ever realize it. There's like that they are abusive or that they are narcissistic or that they are gaslighting you. When
Yeah,
when I started to get help, I honestly I thought I was just kind of like going crazy. And I went to the doctor and they gave me antidepressants and he's like, you know, this doesn't sound right, but let's just kind of like get you so you can get a clear head again. We'll put you on
yeah,
antidepressants. And then he found them. And I was forced to stop taking them. And I mean, there were so many things, but for me, I really needed that reinforcement from everybody around me that this wasn't right. I talked to the police. I didn't do anything, but I talked to them, and they said you need to document everything that's happened. And I still stayed for another like 2.5 years after that. And
yeah,
Dawni, I have not everything written down. It's over 24 pages. Um, this
yeah,
and it's shocking when you look at it that way, and it's shocking when you see those patterns and the
yeah.
cycles, and you're right, how it intensifies. And then you go, oh, you know what, maybe he was just having a bad day. Work
Right.
was tough. Maybe it was stress, and I really shouldn't have cut the mushrooms that way. That was my fault. You
It's so
think I'm
funny that you use
joking?
that as an example. No, I don't. No, that's why I'm laughing because no, no, darling, I don't. Some of the things that were triggers for for incidents, shall we say,
Yeah.
when I look back at them now, honestly could make a stand up comedy about them because
Yeah.
at the time it feels so serious because you get dragged into it.
Yeah.
But when you look back with some clarity and when you've had the chance to get away from it and live outside of it and recognize actually, this isn't right. You look back at those things and you go, wow, logically, how did I emotionally buy in? Like
Yeah.
one of mine
But that's it
was
though, because it's
I
so slow and it's so, it's like, and it just slowly kind of takes over, like you say, like the lobster in the pot. And suddenly you're like,
right.
when the fuck did this happen?
Yeah, so like this will make you giggle. So a couple of years ago, it was October time, and I was tripling down on the family dynamic. My children were going to get the best family days. We were going to, I had money at the time to spend, and I was like, right, okay, we're going to do all of the things that I want my children to experience. These great wholesome things. So I arranged for us to go pumpkin picking.
Oh, cute.
Um, Cute, right? Because my kids had never done that before, and it's kind of it's not been a thing in the UK, but it's like getting more popular.
Yeah.
So I arranged for this great place. I'd seen a place on Instagram. People had posted pictures. It looks super nice. I paid the money for the tickets and I picked the day we were going to go. I told my ex-partner that we were going to go and I got the name of the place wrong. So even now I struggle. One is Myerscough and one is somewhere else. Anyway, one is near Preston and one is near Liverpool. And the difference between the two locations is about 25 minutes in the car. So I'd been saying the one near Preston, which would have made it half an hour away. And I'd gotten that wrong. That was truly my mistake. It was the wrong M, and I'd gotten confused. We got in the car. We went to put it in the sat nav. I went to find the tickets. I got the exact postcode from the tickets, and it said that we were going to have an hour's journey instead of half an hour's journey.
Right.
Now, on this day, we had no other plans. Okay, the tickets were valid for hours, so you can turn up from 10, you can be there till 5. Doesn't matter if you turn up at 2 and stay till 5. Doesn't matter if you turn up at 12 and stay till 2. Like, it was an open, flexible day ticket. Okay, and it was not an unreasonable time. I think it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. So the fact that it would be an extra half an hour, in reality, in logic, no problem. Should have been no problem. If it had been any one of my friends or family or anybody else, no problem. It was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It caused an incident. And I won't go into the details, but as soon as that postcode went into the sat nav and I'd gotten the two M's wrong, that was just the perfect excuse for, okay? So much so that that incident meant that we didn't go. The kids never got that experience. That money was lost. We never went. It was just horrendous. And I think to myself all the time, because I felt so guilty about getting those two locations incorrect for the longest time. It was my fault. And then I couldn't get past what had happened. The incident was quite severe. And obviously what you get is 15 minutes after it's all happened, you get, right, come on, be okay now. We'll go now. I could not. I was gone. There was too much had happened in the incident. I could not recover. There was no going anywhere. I was hardly even in my brain. I was so detached. And it's interesting to me now because I look at that, and if a friend came to me and said, Dawn, well, this is what would happen, I'd be like, what a dick. That's not your fault. Like, these things happen. You're a human. Of course, like, you literally got one small, tiny detail incorrect. But what does it matter? Like, it didn't negatively affect anything. There was no need. It was entirely unnecessary. But I didn't, you see, because when you're in it, you just don't get it. And it's like, that's why I laughed when you said about, oh, like you cut the mushrooms that way. It doesn't start off at that point. Nope. It starts off with things that are seemingly logical. Like, I don't want you to be friends with that boy because I think that boy is actually trying to sleep with you. And I want you to respect our relationship, right? Like, so please don't be friends with that boy. And you think, okay, well, that's stemmed in some logic. And I will give up this friendship for this relationship because maybe he as a man sees something in that other man that I can't see because I'm a woman. And even though I'm sure that this is a platonic situation, I've never felt that from this person. Like, I'm obviously going to choose my partner because he's my soul tie. I'm going to be with him forever. So you slowly, gently let that friendship go. And then the next thing you know, that actually means you can't be friends with any dude. Like, when did you agree to that? Yeah. When was that actually set? Okay. It was never, but it was just kind of woven in to an agreement that you don't remember ever being a part of. And then it, years and years into it, maybe not even years and years. I'm saying that from my experience. For a lot of women, it can literally be weeks or months. You recognize that actually it's just like that cushion isn't quite on a 90-degree angle. And have you ever seen the movie Sleeping with the Enemy?
No.
Oh my gosh, Ash, if you get the time, please watch it. It's old, but it's a classic. Okay. Julia Roberts. Okay. Just one tiny detail. I don't want to spoiler it for you, but it is about abuse. One tiny detail is that he likes his bathroom towels to be exactly the same, like, length. And it's a point. And for those of us that have experienced it, we get it.
I'm going, why does that sound so familiar? Not towels.
Right.
Familiar.
But
actually, it's very interesting. I had a very similar incident about driving. I took a wrong turn one day. That was it. It's And it's shocking. So this is kind of, and I'm sitting here giggling, not because it's funny, but because I'm like, wow, you know what? People are going to listen. They're going to go, oh, oh my God, me too, me too, me too. Because these kind
Yeah.
of things, it's all that weird coercive control, but it's done, it's not overt, it's not like, you're not gonna, it doesn't start that way. It's like, I think maybe it would be better. I really like it when my mushrooms are cut like this. They taste better that way. Okay, fine.
Okay.
You know, I had, I talked not too long ago, but I talked about I made speg ball for the first time since I left. Like I don't know, maybe what month is it? Maybe 6 months ago now, and I lost it. I sat on my kitchen floor crying because I was terrified that I fucked it up. It's spag
Yeah.
ball. You can't really fuck it up. Let's be real.
Not really, but I get the connotation. So I went to see the film It Ends With Us.
Yeah.
My friends had read the book and they love, love, love Colleen. I can't remember her surname now, but the lady who wrote all the books. Um, and they just automatically assumed that I had read the book and I had not. And I'd actively when I read, I have so many different genres that I like to read. Colleen Hoover, that's her name. I do like romance, but I like it sounds awful, but I like romance that's maybe a little bit darker, and
Right.
probably why. Like I like vampire stories and
Right.
things like that. Anyway, I they didn't know that I didn't know the story. Well, and I kind of obviously you kind of know it. This ends with us, and I'd seen the trailers, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is probably going to be somewhat triggering for me. And I don't want to put any spoilers on your podcast, but I do think the majority of people who are bothered about spoilers have probably been to seeing the movie now. It's been out a few weeks.
Yeah.
But there is one particular scene, and I won't tell you what happens in the scene, but he does something. Uh, the partner does something to her that she doesn't like. The whole time telling her that he loves her, and the reason why he's doing it is because he loves her. And I lost my shit. Um, I was in the cinema. I could feel the energy of what was about to happen. I mean, some people have given Blake Lively a bad rep about how she marketed this film, but I actually have an opinion on it, and I think that she she did that awful thing that people do when they raise awareness and they know that they're going to hurt you, but they need to hurt you because you need to see.
Yeah.
And the whole grab your friends and come to the cinema thing gets people who are being abused, who would have dodged this movie like a freaking bullet, to go and actually watch the movie and recognize that they are being abused. And I think that in her kind of low level, kind of like cutesy girly, come along with your pals kind of way, she will have saved more lives doing
Yeah.
it that way than being kind of like, this is a very important movie about domestic abuse. Like, how we find out we're being abused is brutal. It doesn't matter if someone sits you down with a cup of coffee, holds your hand, and tells you, or whether you recognize it in a movie or a book, or through the content online. Does not matter. It's still going to hit you like a ton of fucking bricks the moment you realize, shit, that's me.
I was in
Shit.
I was in therapy just around leaving, just before and kind of the time after. And when we were speaking, and she told me that I was actually being sexually abused, I died. I didn't
Yeah.
even realize it. And
No.
that was the first time I got angry. And then I got angry when I got diagnosed with PTSD. And yeah, but sometimes, even when you're out, you don't even actually realize like how deep it was and exactly everything that's happening. It's like,
Right.
it's crazy. But
It is,
I,
but I also akin it to Stockholm syndrome.
right.
Like, lots of people don't talk about the low level day to day conditioning that occurs where,
Yes.
you know, you know that it's not right, but it's your reality. And we as animals, and I go back to our lizard brain, we are meant to survive. We do what we need to do, we adapt and we deal with. And 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years ago, there will have been similar awful scenarios, and women, well, anyone actually, but majority women, would have had to stay, and they would have adapted and survived, and they would have had, the whatever quality of life they could meet under those circumstances. Again, it is to our privilege that we're able to look at those things and go, oh no, that doesn't have to be our experience. We do actually have a choice. We can leave, as hard as it is, because psychologically we are trapped, but there is an opportunity to leave. There is a window or a door there that wouldn't have been there for our ancestors. And not only that, there are now support networks, there are educational frameworks so that we can know that that's actually what's happening to us. And there, again, is almost an expectation that a woman in that scenario would leave, which, whether we recognize it or not, that conscious thing actually does help us. Although it's not helpful when that person turns to you and says, why didn't you leave earlier? The idea that you would leave it
Yeah.
does actually help us, because it gives us that feeling of, in a logical sense, if I could just find enough of my own thoughts and feelings and gather myself into a human being again, for me, I might actually be able to lean into that sway of, some people would think that this was a good thing for me to leave. That is a seed that helps women actually get out.
Yes.
It might take another 7 or 8 years to get out, but that
Yeah.
seed, once it's planted, and I'll tell you when the first time was for me that I thought, oh crap, this is actually, and it's a long, 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 long time ago. I went on a night out, and I think my ex-partner might have actually been there with me that night. And at that point in the evening, I don't remember how the evening ended, but at that point in the evening, I don't remember there being any issue. Anyway, I went to a bathroom in a bar in Blackpool,
Yes.
which, by the way, the town in which I was born and raised has one of the highest domestic abuse statistics in the entirety of the UK, because what we had up here for the last few decades is a massive industry, hospitality industry, of bars, strip clubs. It's like it
Right.
was in its heyday like a mini Las Vegas. So there's a lot of gambling, there's lots of sex trafficking, there's lots of organized crime around this area. And obviously the gentlemen, shall we say, that are brought up in this particular area are brought up around constant temptation of drinking, gambling, cheating,
Yeah.
and crime as a career. So it's just constantly around them. You can get into that whole nature and nurture discussion, but it statistically up here, it's massive. Anyway, in the back of this cubicle toilet door, there was a poster, and half of the poster was this lovely bright scene, and half of the poster was this dark scene, and it said on it, "Are you his princess 1 minute and a dirty, ugly slut the next? You might be being domestically abused." And I remember reading that and going,
Oh.
oh shit. Because once I've been degraded, once I've been discarded, once I've been told that I'm an ugly, dirty whore bag of a slut that nobody would ever love, I'm a worthless person, I might as well take myself out of the game because I'd be doing everybody a favor, blah, 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 blah. The next day I would be the holy grail Mother Teresa, princess,
The
goddess.
flowers, the praise, the oh.
Fucking hell. And I didn't realize that was the discard and then the love bomb. I didn't know, I didn't have the education of that. All I thought was, okay, he had too much to drink, he said some horrible things to me, and now he's sober and aware he didn't mean them, so we're going to forgive him. Not realizing that every single time I went through an episode of that, I was actually starting to believe not the love bombing, but the dark times more and more and more, to the point where I actually remember waking up once and thinking, wow, it's an honor that he's even with me, because if he hadn't have married me and had children with me, I probably would have died alone because I'm worth nothing. And it was such an true feeling for me. I remember it was, I'm talking probably around 2016, which is heartbreaking for me because we were trying for Jack. So yeah, like I remember just feeling like I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm unattractive, I'm not clever. Even the people at work don't like me, which also was a lie. My friends are only friends with me because I'm the fat funny friend, and everybody needs a fat funny friend. And I really truly for a time believed it. And I say this all of the time, and I do think that it's very poignant. There is a reason why a lot of the people in our network now, Ash, that are building businesses and building empires online, connecting with other women, that there's a massive influx of female entrepreneurs getting divorced or leaving their relationships, because the moment they start to thrive, the moment they start to do something for them, the moment they start to be visible, the moment they start to be attractive, the moment they start to find, actually, it's very easy for me to build an audience. People like me, like, oh shit, the relationship that they have, and I'm not suggesting that they're always abusive, because they're not, but the relationship that they have, all of a sudden, it doesn't work anymore, either because they've grown out of it and the other person hasn't grown with them, which is, very normal.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, like in, our situation, actually, there is evidence to suggest that this shit that you're feeding me daily about how I'm a shit person doesn't actually